is what we call Mimecast targeted threat protection. So above and beyond basic gateway scanning or basic gateway security that a lot of other solutions provide, like your spam scanning and your virus scanning, some email encryption, stuff like that, Mimecast has put sort of a renewed focus on this advanced threat. And those advanced threats I'm talking about are spear phishing, whaling attacks, CEO fraud, people asking for faulty wire transfers. And I think Ashley hit it sort of right on the head when she mentioned that these types of attackers are hoping and praying for the mentality that you're too small, you're not in the right industry, or you'll never be attacked. Well, you're going to be attacked. Nobody's too small, and there is no correct industry. These attacks are only getting more complex, they're getting more complicated, they're getting more difficult to identify, and they're becoming more prevalent, unfortunately. So what I'm going to do is I'll introduce you to targeted threat protection. I'm actually now going to foray into targeted threat protection so that it's fresh in your mind, and I'll actually show you what it does. But first, I did want to pull this up because I thought it was pretty relevant. We actually got this yesterday. Mimecast was made aware of it, but this is a PSA by the actual FBI. This was sent out last week sometime, specifically warning against ransomware attacks, faulty wire transfers, CEO frauds. And we don't have to go through all of this. I'll actually share this out with WAMS, and they can share this out with you guys so you can look into it in a little bit more detail. What it's basically saying is these attacks are getting more prevalent and more complex, and the FBI simply can't keep up with the types of attacks that are coming in. So if you are attacked, feel free to send any type of information to the FBI so that they can log it, and then now that specific attack is in their system. So this is a pretty credible source. It's the FBI. Again, these types of attacks are at the forefront of Mimecast security, and they should be at the forefront of your thinking about security. So let's actually hop into my live production account. So this is my Outlook page. Again, this is what I log into every single day when I come into work. And what we'll first touch on is targeted threat protection. So that actually has 3 different types of functions. The first one is something that we call URL protect. Now, some of you might be utilizing this with McAfee. I believe it's called Click Protect. But what this basically doing is rewriting URLs. So here is our example of a phishing email. Bob Adams is actually a Mimecast engineer. He made this out for us, and it looks like a normal Chase email. Some of you may have gotten to this to your work account, maybe not Chase, maybe it's Bank of America or Citizens Bank or Santander or something else, Amazon. Others may have gotten this to a personal account. So personal accounts are not out of the woods either. Some of you might get this to your Gmail, or if you're like me and have a Yahoo account, your Yahoo account. But this looks like a typical Chase email. I coincidentally have a Chase email account, or Chase credit card account, excuse me. So if I saw this and wasn't thinking, I might click on this. Let me hover over this chase.com link. You'll see a little box pop up in the hyperlink protect-eu.mimecast.com. So what Mimecast is doing is we are rewriting any link coming into the gateway. So not just faulty links or malicious links. Any link coming in, we're rewriting it. And then every single time it's clicked by you or one of your end users, so not the first or the 5th time, every single time this is clicked, if you're archiving with Mimecast, and 10 years from now you pull this back from your email archive and click on this link, Mimecast is still going to go to that page first. We're going to go to that page and we're going to scan it for any malicious intent. If we deem it to be malicious, we're going to stop your end users and you from going. If not, we'll send you on your way as if you typed it into the URL bar yourself. So that's the first function of Mimecast. And again, this isn't terribly unique to Mimecast. The way we scan is a little bit more unique. We do we don't just rely on blacklists or blacklist IPs or domains. We actually do reputation checks on the links. But where we'll improve upon or enhance a typical URL rewrite is this next function here. So let me click on that link. Then I'm actually redirected to something that we call, this page right here, this user awareness page. So, Mimecast or really any other vendor is going to stop your end users from clicking on malicious links in theory. What's to stop your end users from, once they're stopped, copying and pasting that link into the URL bar and going themselves? Nothing really besides education. So that's where this user awareness page comes in. We're trying to not only protect your end users, but also change their mentality. Change it to a think before you click mentality. So this user awareness page is actually optional. It does not have to pop up, or it can actually pop up more frequently for your more frequent offenders. So if you have someone who is maybe making the wrong decisions multiple times or is being targeted the most, this user awareness page can actually pop up for that person more than it pops up for someone who's a little bit more diligent about what links they're clicking on. So what this is doing is giving you additional information on the link. Remember, it was chase.com. See, the destination here is bgmtechnology.com.au. So it's being redirected somewhere else. That should be a red flag. Also, the email address it's being sent from. Remember, it's a chase.com email. It should not be coming from an outlook.com address. So these types of things should spark something in your end users' minds, as maybe I should double check with this link. Now, you would hope that they could exit out and not go. They can choose to accept the risk and continue given all this information, keeping in mind everything's logged and tracked. So I'll still click accept risk and continue on. Mimecast is, of course, still going to block you from going to any malicious site. We're going to give you and your end user additional information on how to recognize a phishing email. But now that decision they made is actually logged. So that decision they made is logged. Any decision they make on a link is tracked. And you can actually sort it. You can export it out. You can present it to the end user. You can present it to a security team or an educational team. So not only, again, is Mimecast stopping you from going to these links once they're clicked, they're also educating your end users along the way. So this user awareness page is going to take traditional URL rewriting a couple steps further. Now, not currently available today, but something that is on the roadmap is actually a way to send out quote-unquote phishing attacks. So malicious links, but nothing malicious where it's downloading or it's a crypto lock or anything like that, to sort of get your end users to start thinking about what they're clicking on. So it's sort of an education tool, sort of a testing tool. That's not currently available. That is something that's on the roadmap that Mimecast is currently working on. I don't have any time frame on that, but I can certainly follow up with WAMS and give you additional information on that. So that's the first aspect of targeted threat protection. That's our URL rewrite. Now, if I head back into my Outlook page, the next function of targeted threat protection is what we call attachment protect. And that looks something like this. So here is an attachment that I actually sent myself from my Yahoo account. I said I had a Yahoo account. Wasn't kidding. So this is basically doing that URL rewrite, but we're applying it to attachments. So we're protecting against any weaponized attachments from coming into your environment. So what Mimecast will do is we will preemptively sandbox any attachments coming in, again, whether they're malicious or clean. We're preemptively sandboxing any attachments that are coming in. Now, that's not unique to Mimecast. There are other online sandboxes out there. 365 comes to mind. Proofpoint Enterprise, I believe, is an online sandbox. Where Mimecast will differentiate ourselves is this next piece. So we're sandboxing any attachments that come on, but then we're actually transcribing them, or we are replacing them to a safe Mimecast read-only PDF of that document. So it's a non-clickable, non-editable version of the document. All the pictures and format and font and text, anything that was in that original version will translate over to the PDF, but now it's just not clickable. So your end user, this actually takes care of two different aspects of, or two different complaints of an online sandbox. The first one is with any online sandboxing, there's going to be a delay in putting it in the sandbox, Mimecast or anybody else opening up that attachment, waiting for anything to deliver or execute, and then sending the clean copy down. So that takes time. So with this safe transcription, you're getting the attachment instantaneously. There's no delay in it coming down, and you're getting it in its original format. It's just now non-clickable. Second way is in doing research for this product, we found that anywhere between 75 and 80% of people just want to read the attachment. They don't actually have to edit it or redline it or e-sign it or do anything like that. So that's where that safe transcription comes in. Now, on the chance that you're in legal or in finance and you need to sign a contract or you need to redline something and send it back, right from the same email, you can request the original version of the copy back, at which point we'll run the original version through the Mimecast sandbox. We'll open it, wait for anything to deliver, wait for anything to execute. If it's clean, we'll send it down. Now, latency, the time between when you click request files and it hits your inbox, our SLA is actually 7 minutes. We see times between 2 and 5 pretty routinely, 2 and 5 minutes. So it's incredibly fast for an online sandbox. To give you some form of reference around latency time with sandboxing, 365 I mentioned has something similar. They don't have the transcription, but they do have a sandbox. they see times between actually 7 and 30 minutes. And if they can't scan an attachment in 30 minutes, they send it down to your end users unscanned. So it's not exactly secure if they can't scan it in a certain period of time. So that's Mimecast Attachment Protect. That's to protect specifically against weaponized attachments, things like macros or ransomware or crypto locker coming in. Now, we mostly find that the amount of attachments or the types of attachments coming in that are malicious are typically Word docs disguised as resumes because, as again Ashley alluded to and as WAMS has on their website, as Mimecast has on our website, send your resumes here if you want a job. So typically HR is going to be targeted the most. And actually, I'm glad that came through. Here's that attachment protect. I clicked request files, and that came through not only 2 minutes later. And that's the original version was scanned. It actually happened to be a PDF. So we find that HR is often targeted the most, and they're often coming through in Word docs disguised as resume files with clickable links. So that is attachment protect. So far we've covered targeted threat protection URL protect, targeted threat protection attachment protect. Now, the last aspect of targeted threat protection is actually my favorite. It's called impersonation protect. Now, Mimecast is actually first to market with this. You really won't find this anywhere else in the space or anywhere else with any of the competitors. And this actually specifically protects against wire transfer attacks or people looking for your employees' W-2 information. And the best way to explain to you exactly what this does is to give you a real-life example of what we built it to protect against. So this is actually a real-life email that Mimecast received. This was a little over a year ago. This is long before we actually had this product. So we were susceptible to these types of attacks, as you guys are susceptible to these types of attacks today. So Peter Campbell is actually the Mimecast CFO. Peter Fondini is actually the Mimecast corporate controller. So we know that they know who the CFO is, which you can find on LinkedIn, and who the controller is, who you can find on LinkedIn. So Peter Campbell is emailing Peter Fondini asking for a wire transfer. Peter Fondini responds, asks if it's for NASDAQ. Mimecast is a publicly traded company on NASDAQ, so that's something that we might send wire transfers for. The person then responds, says no, gives them some arbitrary number, because it's never $50,000 or $25,000. It's always some arbitrary number what they're looking for, so as to not arouse suspicion. And they actually use the term professional service here. So professional service is actually a Mimecast internal term. We use that every day. We send wire transfers for that every single day. So not only do they know who the CFO is, they know who the corporate controller is, the guy in charge of wire transfers, and they know an internal term, professional services. So this is a pretty complex attack. This attack took, I'm sure, a good amount of time to organize and do research for. Luckily, Peter Fondini works for a security firm. He realized that he might have to check with the CFO. We ended up sending to our CISO, Mark O'Hare, and we ended up not sending the wire transfer email through. So this is a typical example of attacks that come in every single day, and actually had they not been targeting a security firm where their employees are pretty well trained like the Mimecast employees are, we might have sent $48,000 cost for us. The question is, how did this email get through? So it's not a virus. There's nothing, this attachment was attached much later. There's nothing in this email. There's no faulty links. It's actually not a spoofed domain. So by default, Mimecast stops any spoofed domains coming into your environment. So anybody sending externally into your environment with your same domain, Mimecast will block. Now, there are, of course, certain times when you want that to happen. Maybe you're using a third-party marketing firm or like ConnectWise for billing or something like that where they have to spoof your domain. That we can set up bypass rules for, but by default, we'll stop all email spoofing. Question is, how did this get through? So let's actually take a closer look at the address it was sent from. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you. So you'll notice it's not coming from Mimecast, M-I-M-E-C-A-S-T. It's actually coming from Mimecast, M-I-lowercase-r, lowercase-n-E-C-A-S-T. So the R and the N, at first glance, look like an M, and this looks like it's coming from Mimecast.com. This is exactly where Impersonation Protect comes in. So Impersonation Protect does three different things. First thing it does is it does scans on the username for any pattern changes or character variations that are out of the norm. So maybe instead of two L's at the end of Campbell, it was an I and an L, or a 1 and an L, or there was a period somewhere in there. that would be a character variation, and that would raise a red flag. It does the same thing with domains. So Mimecast would be 2 character variations outside of the norm. That would raise a red flag. Also with domains, we're doing checks on these domains to see when they were observed. So typically in these types of attacks, the attacker is registering the domain day of or week of, and they actually do it with stolen credentials, stolen credit cards. So they actually only have a relatively short period of time before they can register the domain, send out the attack, and then GoDaddy or whoever they're registering with realizes what's going on and shuts the domain down. So Mimecast will run observation checks, what we call them, on when a domain was observed, meaning when it started sending email out. If it was day of or week of or whatever the parameters you set it is, if it hits those parameters, that will raise another red flag. Domains registering day of or week of should not be asking you for wire transfers, or should very rarely be asking you for wire transfers. Finally, the last thing we'll do is keyword scans. So in this case, professional services, wire transfer, CEO, employee W-2. Really, without any keyword that you want us to scan for, Mimecast will scan for, and then that will raise another red flag. So I'm sure some of you are jotting down right now, what are red flags? So there are a few different things we can do at the user level, but also administratively. So at the user level, if we raise a red flag, you can enact a big fat stationery right here under the header bar that says sent from external email or suspicious content. So that's a very, very big visual red flag that should get them to realize that they should contact the person who was sent from. We can also send an email to the intended recipient, a separate email to the intended recipient, letting them know that the email they just received had raised some red flags, and we list out what the red flags are, and that we recommend they contact either a security team or the person the email is sent from. So that's on the user side. On the administrative side, what we can do is blind carbon copy or just fully CC a security team. We can CC an administrator. We can actually hold the message for review for an administrator or a security team before it even gets down to the end user, so that you can review it, check with whoever you need to check with, give the thumbs up, and send the email right back down. So there are a number of different things we could do both administratively and at the user level to ensure that whoever's getting this type of attack or whoever's being targeted realizes that they should double check with the intended sender first. So that's impersonation protect. I know it's a lot to throw at you, and we'll answer questions towards the end. But that was specifically the Mimecast targeted threat protection bundle. Pretty advanced, especially the impersonation protect. And again, taking the gateway virus and spam scanning a couple steps further, and also taking traditional URL rewriting and attachment sandboxing a couple steps further. So that's Mimecast attachment protect, targeted threat protection. Next, what I wanted to move into was Mimecast archiving. So at a pretty high level, Mimecast archiving by default has a 99-year retention, so essentially forever. Now that can obviously be decreased based on whatever you want it to be globally. Different groups can actually have different retention periods. Even individual end users can have retention periods. So maybe C-level people, we keep emails for 10 years, while a marketing intern we keep for 6 months. Totally up to you guys, totally customizable and configurable. Our search SLA, which is actually industry best, it's 7 seconds, and that's across any one of our 3 endpoints if we skip down a couple slides. So I'll show you our first endpoint in just a second. It's our Outlook plugin. But we also have 2 other endpoints, which I'll show you towards the end. Mimecast Personal Portal, which is basically a URL or a web browser, and then a free downloadable mobile app. So you can actually access any email you've ever sent from any one of those 3 endpoints, even from the palm of your hand if you're on the road or at an airport, or just simply don't have access to your laptop. Keeping inbox space free. So because our retention period is so large, and because we actually don't charge you for data, so Mimecast will never charge you for data that we collect once you turn the service on. We never charge you for data storage. So we don't charge you for the amount of data or the length of time you're storing data with us. Because of that, you can actually keep your retention in Outlook very, very light, even your retention on Exchange incredibly light. So for instance, Mimecast, internally, we have a 2-year retention limit on on Exchange. Everything else, we use Mimecast to search across. And then exportable. So it's your data. You should be free to do with it what you want. So we have full e-discovery capabilities. We have full litigational capabilities. all the data that you search or that we collect is exportable and presentable. You can present it if you're in a litigation case or you're being deposed, or you just need to export it for some project down the line. Now, to hop back in to show you exactly what the archive search looks like, I'm going to move back into my Outlook client here, and here's that Mimecast Outlook client that I was talking to you about. So right off the bat, this Outlook plugin is going to differentiate us from really any other vendor out there, the functionality of this. So McAfee, yeah, had an Outlook plugin. It was basically a plugin that gave you a link, directed you back to the web portal. So the Mimecast plugin allows you to do anything Mimecast related from right within Outlook. We're not redirecting you anywhere. We're not forcing you to create new login or to log in someplace else. You're doing everything from right within Outlook. Now here's my archive section here. So let me pull up this pretty advanced search operator that you can search for your data for. So how is Mimecast collecting your data? Think of Mimecast as a wraparound for your Exchange server. So we're the first point of entry for anything coming in from the outside world, at which point we're archiving. We're the last point of exit for anything leaving your environment and going to the outside world, at which point we're archiving. And then we're going to set up a journal connector to capture all your internal email. So anything you send or receive, or send and receive internally, is going to be captured by Mimecast. So there are some pretty granular search criteria that you can search through. Of course, through text and keyword. You can also search domains to, from, or with, or individual email addresses. Specific date ranges, and you can actually specify between what date ranges you want to search. Now, I'll do an all-time search for the purposes of this. Individual file types, so maybe Ashley sent me a spreadsheet that I specifically wanted to search for. I can come down here, search a spreadsheet, and search her address, and it'll pop up exactly that. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention before I actually show you a search would be this user dropdown. So I do not have personally any delegation to, but you can actually delegate an end user to be a moderator over somebody else's email archive. So a good use case for that would be maybe an executive assistant having access to the CEO's email archive, or if I belong to a distribution list or a help desk account that I want to search across specifically. I can be delegated what we call moderator rights over that specific email archive, run a search on that archive only, and then pull back the results. So I'll run a quick archive search on my own personal archive. We'll do it on the word demo. So again, this is going back and pulling any email I've ever sent or received or sent internally with the word demo in it. And again, our search SLA is 7 seconds. Let me sort this to oldest first so that we get all the newer emails out of there. So once this sorts, here's all these emails from 2012. This is actually probably the first day I started at Mimecast. You can see they still exist within Mimecast. I can certainly open them up. I can download or save any attachment that I maybe didn't. I can actually even act on these messages. I can click reply, reply all, forward, and that actually pulls up the native Outlook template that you and your end users should all be familiar with. So that is where the Outlook integration with archiving comes full circle. Even though these emails no longer exist within my Outlook, they certainly no longer exist within the Mimecast Exchange, I can still pull them back, and I can act upon them as if I had just received them yesterday, and I can act upon them from right within Outlook. Let me get out of here. Furthermore, I mentioned exporting at the administrative. So if at the administrative level, maybe any discovery case or somebody's being sued or you're suing somebody else and need to present data, you can actually export at the end user level as well. So I can select one or more of these, export them back down into Outlook so that I don't have to keep running the same Mimecast searches over and over again for them. I can add them right within Outlook, just want a quick keyword search using the Outlook bar, and then I'm good to go with that data. So that's Mimecast archiving at a pretty high level. Again, I showed you mostly from the Outlook plugin. We also have a separate web portal that looks like this. So this is what our web portal looks like. I have the same search criteria and capabilities here. I can run the same searches using the same criteria right here. This is what I meant to click. And we can dive more into the personal portal a little bit towards the end, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like. Again, same search results pulling across the same data set. So that is Mimecast archiving at a high level. So far we've covered targeted threat protection. We've also covered Mimecast archiving. Next, we wanted to dive into Mimecast email continuity. So at a high level, what this is a 100% SLA-backed guaranteed email uptime during a server outage. So whether that outage is planned, maybe it's maintenance or an upgrade from 2010 to 2013, or maybe a migration from on-prem Exchange 365 2016, or an unplanned outage, storm rolls through and knocks out your servers, maybe your server room flooded, somebody walks by and knocks the plug out. Mimecast will take over the sending and receiving of your emails from actually right within Outlook, and our SLA is 100% on that. So the 100% SLA you will not find anywhere else. Mimecast stands behind it. A lot of other vendors are actually, every other vendors are either unable or unwilling to present 100% SLA on uptime. Mimecast is not. That real-time send and receive within Outlook. So we're not actually redirecting you to the web portal or to your mobile app. Both of those will work in a server outage. So if you're on the phone, you're on the road, your native email app on your phone's not going to work. Just pop into the Mimecast app and you can send and receive in real time. Same with the web portal, but the Outlook is really where it's key. So some of you may have noticed boxes popping up right down here in the bottom right of my page during my presentation saying continuity, and I actually opened one. I opened that attachment protect. Now I've actually been in continuity since before the presentation or the webinar started. I've been simulating a server outage. I've only received 3 emails, actually 4 if you count the attachment email, but I've received to it right within Outlook. So I'm not being redirected anywhere. Mimecast is not spooling in the back end and then sort of blanket shooting all those emails down once the outage is over. We're actually allowing you and your end users to stay right within Outlook, and it's just business as usual. You're sending and receiving in real time. Now when a continuity event is over or the server comes back up online, Mimecast will of course sync back down with Exchange so that your Exchange is retaining a copy of those messages we've sent or received. But the plugin is actually smart enough to perform what we call a deduplicate. So we're actually deduplicating all the emails coming down. So your end users are only seeing one version of it in their inbox at any given time. So there's not multiple copies of it. We're not storing them in multiple places. You're getting one copy of it. It's ending up in your inbox. So that's email continuity. We can certainly discuss more about that if there are any questions. But important to note, the 100% SLA for service and high availability, and also the real-time send and receive from all 3 of our endpoints, including the mobile app. Final thing I'll mention on continuity is I've actually been working offline. I have not been connected to my Exchange at all for the last 40 minutes. You saw me run archive searches. You saw me export mail down. I've received 3 messages. So you can actually perform any Mimecast function even without the use of your server. So with Exchange, if you're just using Exchange, you don't have any backup to it. If your server goes down, you don't really have any searchability besides what's in Outlook. With Mimecast, you can actually go back, you can pull archive emails back, you can send archived emails. You saw me checking my targeted threat protection and clicking on those links. So everything is going to work once you're in continuity mode from right within Outlook. So that is Mimecast email continuity. So far we've covered targeted threat protection, we've covered archiving and our email continuity. So sort of to sum up, why choose Mimecast? And we'll open up to questions in a little bit. So that advanced security protection. So on top of our virus and spam scanning, which the first bullet here, that multi-layered security protection for virus and spam, we're going to do these advanced threat protection scannings with the URL rewriting, the sandboxing of attachments, as well as that impersonation protect, which you're not going to get anywhere else. To sort of touch very quickly on our virus and spam scanning, because we haven't yet, we offer 100% SLA on antivirus and a 99.5% SLA on anti-spam. Our anti-spam, or our spam false positive rate is actually 1 in 1 million. It's industry low. I know that tends to be one of the main complaints I get from people switching over to McAfee is the false positive rate. Sometimes they send things through that they shouldn't be, and sometimes it gets a little irritating that the same emails are coming through more often than not. So the multi-layered security protection means that we're utilizing our own proprietary virus scanning engines, and then we're also outsourcing out to 3 commercial-grade virus scanning engines, and we're layering it on top of our own proprietary. So 99.9% of Mimecast is proprietary. The only thing that is not are those 3 outsourced commercial-grade virus scanning engines. Everything else is Mimecast proprietary besides those virus scanning engines. But outsourcing to engines that Mimecast doesn't personally manage means that we have a much broader idea of the types of attacks, known or unknown, that are being discovered and that are being sent out on a daily basis. And we're getting updates in real time. So that's that multi-layered approach. 2, the fully integrated, purpose-built, and 100% cloud platform. So contrary to popular belief, Mimecast is 100% cloud-based proprietary platform with the exception of those commercial-grade engines. So there is nothing that you have to install on-prem. There is no on-prem box anywhere. It is born in the cloud, raised in the cloud, and we were cloud before cloud was popular, before cloud was cool. So I've been here 4 years. The most typical discussions I had in my first 6 months here were, why should I move to the cloud? Everything on-prem seems to be working just fine. Now it's not, why should I move to the cloud? It's, when can I move to the cloud? So Mimecast is a 100% cloud-based platform that allows us to scale our solution from one user mom and pop ice cream shops to 10,000 user multinational companies. They're getting the same exact solution because it's a cloud-based platform. It also allows us to upgrade or add on services, update services, incredibly easy. It's just a push out from Mimecast Cloud to yours, and all those services will flow down to all of your end users. The end user experience. So we went through the Mimecast plugin. We very briefly touched on the personal portal, and you guys really haven't seen the mobile app, which I can show a screenshot of in a second. But the unrivaled end user experience is what's going to differentiate us right off the bat. The Outlook plugin is by far our most widely used endpoint, and as well as it should be. The functionality from right within Outlook is really unmatched within the industry. Other Outlook plugins will either crash your Outlook from time to time or just redirect you to a separate web portal. The Mimecast Outlook plugin is fully integrated with any version of Exchange starting with 07 and any version of Office 365, again, starting with 07 if people are still using 07 365. You can do your archive searches from there. You can send and receive from there. You can check your spam messages from there. You can send encrypted messages from there. So the end user experience is really unparalleled. Again, the Outlook plugin is our most widely used endpoint. We, of course, have the personal portal if you're on the road or don't maybe have access to your laptop, and the mobile app if you're at a show or on the road, in the airport. Any of the functionality translates across all 3 endpoints. Now, why consider Mimecast against other vendors? Now, I'll go to the next slide. There are a lot of things, a lot of check marks between Mimecast, McAfee, and Proofpoint. And we'll actually send the slide deck out so that you have an idea of these. We won't go through all of them. But 2 things I wanted to focus on this first slide is, 1, the 100% service availability SLA. Again, you'll notice that Mimecast is the only one who can provide that. Either the others, and I guess McAfee's end of lifing, so they're sort of out of it, but Proofpoint are either unwilling or unable to present those types of SLAs to you guys. Mimecast is not, we're more than willing to do so. Second thing I wanted to point out was there are 2 Proofpoints there. There's Proofpoint Essentials and there's Proofpoint Enterprise. So Mimecast, as I've mentioned, is a proprietary solution. It's scalable to from 1 user companies all the way up to 10, 15, 20,000 user companies. Proofpoint's not. So Proofpoint Enterprise is a pretty good product. They live in the enterprise space. They're an on-prem box that you have to install, and they're trying to virtualize themselves into the cloud, but it's not as easy as they think it is. Proofpoint Essentials is actually not a Proofpoint product. It's an acquired product called Mill Distiller that they acquired a couple of years ago, slapped the Proofpoint name on it, and they're branding it as Proofpoint Enterprise. So that's the 2 things I wanted to point out. Again, Mimecast is its own solution, and we're scalable, and the 100% service availability SLA that really no one else can provide. Here's some additional information on our virus SLAs as well as the TTP products that we offer that a lot of people don't. You notice the end user security awareness tools. That was that user awareness page that popped up when we clicked on the malicious link. Nobody else is doing that in the marketplace, and we're actually even improving upon it. Also, that safe transcription to the PDF, which is going to be right down here in the attachment conversion. No one else in the industry is really doing that right now. Now again, why Mimecast? The pros and cons. The user interface we've been through, so the Outlook plugin you won't find anywhere else, and the functionality and efficiency of the Outlook plugin you won't find anywhere else. I actually think holistic email solution and Mimecast proprietary sort of go hand in hand. So we brand ourselves as a unified email management holistic solution. So that means that you can purchase archiving, continuity or high availability, email security with all that advanced threat, email encryption, large file send tools, link archiving. You can basically run the gamut of anything and everything you need for your email environment right from within Mimecast, and it's proprietary. Proof points, acquiring products and slapping the proof point label on it. Companies like Symantec are acquiring Enterprise Vault and Message Labs and slapping the Symantec lab on it. And that really creates a lot of friction within their environment. So their solutions really don't play well together because they weren't born together. Mimecast was. The in-house support, so again, another common misconception of Mimecast is that we're outsourcing support. That's 100% not true. I am in our Boston, North American headquarters. All of our North American support actually sits in the next room. We have lunch with those guys every single day. So the support is all in-house. It's 100% Mimecast support. We're never outsourcing support. The functionality across all three endpoints we've covered in pretty well in depth today in that advanced threat protection. So there are versions of what we're offering out there, but nothing as complete and holistic as the products that we're offering, and even some that no one else is offering when I talk about Impersonation Protect. Now, some cons about the system. Learning a new system and interface. That's never an easy thing. That's going to be the same across really any other solution. What I can say is, in helping with that, we have extensive YouTube videos. We have a lot of tutorials on a publicly available, what we call our knowledge base site, that can actually walk you through how to access everything, but it will take some time. The learning curve is pretty slight, but it is a new system for you and your end users to learn and get used to. And then the higher monthly investment than some other email security solutions. So again, yes, Mimecast typically runs a little bit more expensive than specifically McAfee, but really a lot of the other solutions out there, you have to sort of weigh the pros and the cons of the price. Yes, you're going to pay a little bit higher monthly, but do you want to pay a little bit higher monthly and not send a $48,000 wire transfer email, or sort of skimp on that type of protection and then open yourself to those types of gaps? So it's, again, it's a pro and con, sort of weighing the balance. Now, that is all I planned on covering today, and actually we got through that relatively quickly. So I did want to open it up to any questions that anybody had surrounding anything that I've covered with Mimecast, and even anything that I maybe didn't cover and you're wondering if we did. So any questions at all?
All right, let's see here. We've got one. How will you help us to execute false phishing attacks? And I know you said, Justin, that you weren't sure when, but maybe you can help them to understand how that will be working.
Good question. Do you mean surrounding sending out phishing attacks as sort of tests or education for your employees?
I believe that's what they were alluding to, yes.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we are actually in the works with partnering with a pretty big educational tool that actually specifically does that. So once that happens, you actually as an administrator can send out attacks however you want, and you can actually frame them however you want. So maybe one day it's a chase email, the next day it's coming from your CEO asking to click on this link because you're getting a raise. Stuff like that, you will be able to send out and sort of try to trick your end users, and then all the decisions they make, meaning did they delete the email, did they click on the email, did they forward it to a security team, did they totally ignore it, any decisions that your customers are making, or your end users are making, that can all be logged and tracked so that you can praise some employees while giving maybe a little bit of a slap on the wrist or a scolding to other employees. So not too far away, there will be a way to sort of frame your own spear phishing attacks that you can send out through Mimecast to your employees. I can give additional information once we sort of go public with the partnership, but as of now, that's really all I can say about it. But there will be ways to sort of template your own and send them out.
All right, we've got another question here. Let me see. How can I check my spam messages at any time, or do I have to wait to get the daily report?
Great question. So no, you don't. You can check them at any time. We, of course, do send out a daily report if you want, but if I hop into my Mimecast plugin, this on-hold message queue right here. So this is going to be my daily spam queue, and I don't clean mine out for purposes of demonstrations, of course. But this is how I'll get my up-to-date spam queue proactively. And again, I'm showing it to you through the plugin. It's available across any of the endpoints, so even from your phone or the mobile app. Where this improves upon that email that comes out every day is that, and I'll actually make this bigger for you, instead of basic header information like who was sent from and the subject, we're actually giving you a rendering of the body of the message so that you as an end user can actually go through, read the message, and then make a much more informed decision as to whether you want to release the message, you want to block it, you want to mark it as spam, anything like that. So we're not actually delivering the message or executing anything, but we're giving you basically a read-only version of the body of the message that your end users can go through and decide whether or not it's a legitimate email. So that's proactively from the plugin. Again, it's available across any of the endpoints.
All right, great. And we've got another one here. So, how large can an email attachment be?
Good question. So if you're not utilizing any of our large file send tools, the Mimecast limitation is 250 megs, so it's actually pretty big. So the Mimecast limitation on messages coming through is 250 megs. If you are using our large file send tool, which is actually right here, and we haven't really dived into it, but that allows you to send or receive attachments up to 2 gigs in size. So if you're using large file send, that's 2 gigabytes. If you're not, it's 250 megs.
Okay, next question. Can Mimecast in any way make sure that only our client is receiving and responding to emails from our office?
Yeah, you certainly can. That would most likely be one of our encryption tools. So either normal TLS encryption, but that doesn't really stop it from only coming from your office. Most likely secure messaging, which is our web-based encryption portal. So yeah, you can actually do that specifically based on location. So the IP, either specific or range of the office you're sending to or the person you're sending to, or even the specific domain. So yes, you can through one of our encryption tools.
Okay, wonderful. We've got one more question here. Can you send encrypted messages ad hoc with any external email address without any prep work on the receiver part?
Yes. So if I open up a new email here, oops, come into my Mimecast tab in the new email, here's my Send Secure button. So that's a Send Secure message, meaning encrypted message. It's basically a web-based encryption portal, so the end user clicks on a link, then they're viewing the message from the Mimecast cloud. So yes, you can. This sort of goes along the question we just had about the location, meaning specific IPs, but you can allow your end users to either choose to send a secure message, so per message, or you can automate the entire process. Mimecast can scan for like bank routing numbers or social security numbers or keywords or anything like that that automatically sends a message encrypted. But yes, you certainly can, and that can be done right within Outlook, and the end user is basically clicking on the link and then viewing the message in a portal.
Okay, and it looks like we've got a couple more coming in here. So, how much access is granted through moderator rights when someone is a moderator on your email archives?
Another good question. As much as you want. So typically, we would give them sort of full view rights, and by full view rights, I mean that they can actually see not only message metadata, but also the content of the message. So that's what we typically give. You can limit that to only seeing metadata, so they can just see basically the subject, who is sent to and from. From would be a pretty easy one. But the answer is however much you want. By default, typically we give them full access so they can view email content as well as any metadata on top of it.
Okay. And now, how does Mimecast work with Adobe Send and Track?
Good question. So we typically don't really we won't really affect that at all. We're still sending and receiving through Exchange. It's just hitting Mimecast at the once it passes through Exchange or before it enters Exchange. I'm assuming Adobe Track and Trace is done at the Exchange level. I'm not totally familiar with it, but that shouldn't really affect it. We're routing email the same way. It's just hitting Mimecast before and after it leaves. So it really shouldn't affect that. You still should be able to track everything through a third-party source. If I'm not mistaken, it's done by Exchange.
All right, now the resync process after an email server outage, will the Outlook client automatically file back your local server?
Yes, it will. That was that deduplication process we were talking about. So yes, it certainly will.
Fantastic. Well, I believe that there are no further questions. So thank you, Justin, for your time today. Once again, we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your week and don't hesitate to reach out with any questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Justin.